Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? Great. All right, one person's awake. Great. It's my pleasure to introduce Akshay today. Akshay is a certified Salesforce application and system architect working for Kest. He performs in the capacity of the lead architect on Salesforce implementations, including sales, service, and community, and other clouds on the Lightning platform. Akshay has been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 9 years now and has seen the platform evolve over the years. Without further ado, let me hand it over to Akshay and take us through the session.
All right. Hopefully everyone's having a great start to Dreamforce. First day today. Just a quick introduction about Kest as well, the company that I work for. We're one of the early adopters of Lightning as well as communities. We're one of the first implementers of Lightning communities. We have a lot of success in that space. So going forward, I'm going to show you the next slide, which you have never seen before or you'll never see again in Dreamforce. And that's this one, safe harbor slide. You have to cover whatever you see, purchasing decisions, just make sure you're making them based on what exists currently and not anything that's shown in the demo, if you make any future decisions. All right, so we'll go over the agenda. What we're going to cover is we're going to cover a brief overview of the Lightning framework and Salesforce communities. Many of you may already know about it, but just going to give a very high-level overview. Then what I'm going to do is cover the community license comparison, different types of licenses that are available, and what makes this use case stand out for having these advanced grids. Then we're going to do a demo. We'll do a code walkthrough, and we'll conclude with some, what we saw. Right? So the Lightning component framework. How is this different from the classic framework that we used to have earlier? So Salesforce has come up with this Lightning framework, which basically what it provides you, it provides you for a stateful client and a stateless server architecture. What that means in plain simple language is that, remember the time you built advanced Visual Force pages with a lot of different functionality, and then you ran into this view state exceeded error. Guess what? With Lightning, you won't come across that because that's your state is primarily maintained at the client side. The Lightning component framework provides also for an Apex controller if you want to do any kind of DML operations, or also you want to fetch data from a Salesforce object, or you want to do some external callouts and stuff like that. When you create a Lightning component bundle, here are all the resources that get created. What we are going to touch upon is just the first 4 of those. The component, controller, helper, and style. These are the ones that you'll commonly be using when you're creating Lightning components. So your component, that actually contains all of your HTML markup that you will use. You can define attributes and you can use base Lightning components. You can use standard HTML markup, and you can make JavaScript calls. You can wire JavaScript calls in the component. The controller is a JavaScript controller. It's defined as a JavaScript object in object literal notation. So basically, it's name and value pairs. Your name is the function name, and your value is actually what the function does. In addition to the controller, there's a helper. What you can do is, if you have a lot of reusable functions that you want to write, you'd prefer to write them in the helper and call them from, you can make multiple different calls from the controller to different functions. So that's what the helper is there for. For style, if you don't intend to use the standard Lightning styles, the SLDS, and if you have your own styling that you would like, or you would like to override some of the SLDS style, you can write inside style. Okay. On the right side, I have the different community templates. So with Salesforce, when you create a community, you have an option. You can either pick some Lightning templates, or you can go with Visualforce and tabs. If you go the Lightning route, you also get access to many default community templates that Salesforce provides. And you can also leverage any Lightning Bolt templates that are available in the App Exchange. So this, whenever you create a new community, you'll see a listing of all the available templates. One of the one that we'll be using for this demo is going to be the customer service template. The customer service template, if you're having a hard time selecting which template to use, the customer service template is a pretty robust template. It provides all of the advanced features and also allows you, it's currently the only template that allows you to build a Lightning Bolt solution and also define custom themes if you're not satisfied with the standard themes that are available with the templates. So if you're in a doubt, you'd probably be better off selecting the customer service template. Right? Next thing I want to cover is the community license comparison. If you decide to go the community route, you'll have to pick licenses that Salesforce provides you. If you do a comparison of the different licenses, customer community plus, partner community, Lightning external apps, and Lightning external apps plus. The customer community license is kind of like a high volume license that's at a relatively lower cost. But it does have some feature. It does exclude some features that are available in Community Plus as well as Partner Community. And one of the main features that we get a lot of use cases where customers have the customer community license, but they're also looking to be able to export their data out of their Salesforce community. And because reports, which come standard with Customer Community Plus and Partner Community, is not available with Customer Community, it does require some kind of custom development to be able to export your data out of the Salesforce community. Right? OK, so next we're going to cover the demo. So what I have here is I've created a basic customer service community using the standard template. I've added 3 different tabs here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover the differences between the 3 different approaches you can take to building grids in Salesforce communities. The first one here that I have is pretty much a standard Salesforce record list component that you can add to your community pages. It's really quick to add. It's pretty much standard configuration. You don't have to write any programming. It's also got all of these advanced features that you come to expect with Salesforce list views, like filters. You can filter data. You can do charts. You can do some kind of inline editing, refresh. You can view it as a table or a Kanban view. And then you get all of these list view controls. And it's also adding it to the community. So if you're familiar with the community builder, adding it to the community is really quick. You can just go in here, create a page, or go to any page that you want to add this list view to. And it's just a drag and drop from the standard components. There's a record list component that you can drag and drop. And what you need to define here is just number of records you want to show, load, whether you want to show the full layout or the compact layout or the standard layout, and then the object and the list view. So it's pretty standard, doesn't require much programming, just drag and drop a standard component. However, one of the limitations of list views is you can't really export the data out, either as Excel or as PDF. And so we go to the next option. And the other thing with list views is that if you needed another component to control the data that's being displayed, it's difficult to control standard component displays in the community. So the next option we have here is using something called as Salesforce base components. So Salesforce is provided in a component library where you can use some base components. Like you'll see a lot of different base components defined with the Lightning prefix. So the next one that I have here is actually implementing a Lightning data table. Go to this one. So a Lightning data table is basically giving you the flexibility to build a grid without having to write all of the programming around, doing the styling, how do you show the different columns, and things like that. So if you go here, here's a custom component that I've implemented that uses the Lightning data table. Looking at the code, so here is my Lightning data table component. It's a standard Aura component with a bunch of attributes, and I'm implementing something called as Lightning data table here. There's a lot of different features that you can use, attributes that you can set for this Lightning data table, including what columns you want to display. On row selection, if you want to do an action, you want to do custom sort algorithms, sort direction, and things like that. The important element here is the data. So I have an attribute set up here, v.data, which is type of sObject. And basically what this is doing is it's retrieving the accounts and displaying them here. Now, why you would use a Lightning data table is typically, many of the times if you're building some custom page, your data in this table may depend on a different component. A selection of another value in another component may drive selection of data in the Lightning data table. So that would be one of the use cases where you could use a Lightning data table. It also, if you look in terms of the styling, it's kind of similar to the list views, but doesn't have the header buttons and things like that. But you could add those using other Lightning components. Finally, it's also, this one does not actually provide any ability to export. So we come to the third option, which is implementing. You could either implement, if you wanted some export capability, you could do it either with a Visualforce page, which requires a lot of coding, or you could also use some kind of external JavaScript libraries. So what I have here is an accounts list using a JavaScript library called as jqGrid. It basically implements a jQuery, and there's a few other libraries that it implements. What it gives you is it gives you this advanced grid where you can do you can do some filtering. Say you want to say account name contains United. I can do filtering. I can also do exports to Excel as well as PDF. So here's my export. So I can filter data and then do an export. And I can do an export to PDF. And if I wanted the whole data set, I would just reset the filters, and I can do an export at that point, which will pretty much load all of my data set. It also gives you the standard, pagination. So if you're someone who prefers pagination, and you want to have this view as against the Lightning data table, which currently only supports infinite loading. So if you wanted to load additional records, you have to scroll down, and then it's going to load extra additional records. So if you're not too fond of using infinite loading, you can use this with pagination. You can also define different, how many rows you want to show when it first loads. Let's go over to the console to look at how this is being coded. So again, I have a Lightning component here. What I'm using here is using these libraries. So in order to use any external JavaScript libraries, you have to use the Lightning requires tag in Salesforce components. And what you need to do is, so in this one, I'm actually loading all the styles related to jqGrid. Here I'm loading the scripts. In order to make sure that your scripts, if they are dependent, so let's say this script is dependent on this script, you need to make sure you write these scripts in the right order, because they're going to be loaded in that particular order. And you shouldn't use separate Lightning requires tags. If you use separate Lightning requires tags, Salesforce will load them parallelly. So if you have some dependency, you should prefer to use it in one Lightning requires tab. It also, you need to upload your JavaScript libraries to static resources. So I'm referencing those static resources here. What you also need to do here is, if you're writing any JavaScript code that actually relies on those JavaScript libraries, then you need to call this after scripts loaded method. You can't use the standard Aura init method that Salesforce provides, because these JavaScript libraries are typically loaded asynchronously. So your Aura init, whenever it fires, it's not going to have access to those libraries in most cases. So any code that you want that depends on these libraries that you want to call on load, you need to write it in this after scripts loaded attribute. So I've defined a doInit method. If you look at the rest of the markup, it's fairly minimal, because the grid as such is rendered in this doInit method. If you go to the controller, basically what you're doing here is you're getting the records first. So I have an Apex controller that gets the Salesforce accounts records. And we're not going to go through that, but basically it returns the list of account objects. And then you can set different parameters for the jqGrid library. You can set here are the different columns that I want. I want to say the account name, number, phone type, website. You can define a custom name. Then I can set different other attributes like width, height, the different options to show when I want to display the number of rows when it first loads, and a lot of other different features. So there's a lot of different features that it provides. It's not implemented all of those features, but you can extend. It gives you an ability to extend as you add different features here. OK. And then I have the helper here if I want from some common functions that I've defined, like saving the filter, saving the row ID, things like that. Going back into my presentation, so we did a demo, did a quick code walkthrough. To conclude, you don't always want to use, every time if you have a use case, your first approach should not always be to go with the JavaScript library, right? There is a lot of benefits of going with standard record list or using some base components. So when you go review this list, I'm sure this presentation will be available. You can review this list of the pros and cons of going with different approaches. You can, with most of the standard list views, we have configurable solution, built-in filter capabilities, XLDS styling, and things like that. We're kind of running short on time, so I'm not going to cover all the items, but you can review a list of these. Your first pass would always be go in the list views, then to the base components. And if they can't solve your problem, then go to the JavaScript libraries. All right, and if you have some more questions for us, feel free to meet us. We have a booth in Moscone South. We also have a lunch event that we'll be conducting on Thursday. We have the URL at the bottom, quest.com/Dreamforce_18. If you go there, you can sign up for the lunch. It's probably going to be a little bit better than the Dreamforce lunch. And we also have the developer keynote. So make sure to attend that to see all the new features that are available. All right. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. So I would have liked to take questions, but you can feel free to reach me at the booth. I'll be at the booth, or you can meet me at the lunch event. All right? Thank you.